The SoHo gallery smelled of linseed oil, wax, and the faint musk of ambition, a scent that clung to the white walls like a second skin. Elena Voss stood beside her largest canvas, a 6 by 8-foot storm of ochre and indigo, its edges bleeding into the room as if refusing to be contained. The opening night crowd buzzed, collectors in tailored coats, critics with pens poised like surgical tools, and artists wearing their hunger like a badge. Elena's hands, stained with weeks of pigment, twitched at her sides. She was 32, an adjunct professor at NYU scraping by on $32,000 a year, and this was her first solo show in a decade. The weight of it pressed against her ribs, a quiet ache that felt like a bruise forming. She adjusted the neckline of her black dress, simple but sharp, chosen to say "I belong here" without shouting it. Her dark hair was pulled into a low bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face, which was pale from nerves and lack of sleep. The gallery's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting shadows that made her paintings look alive, almost defiant. She'd poured everything into this show: savings, sleepless nights, the stubborn hope that her work could speak louder than her doubts. Across the room, she saw him, Gabriel Navarro, her ex-partner, leaning against a pillar. His black turtleneck and smug half-smile were unchanged since their breakup 2 years ago, when he'd taken credit for her ideas in a joint exhibition and left her to rebuild alone. He was talking to a curator, gesturing with the confidence of a man who believed the world owed him its attention. Elena's pulse spiked, her breath catching like a canvas stretched too tight. Gabriel hadn't just broken her heart. He tried to erase her from her own work, whispering to gallerists that her talent was derivative, his shadow lingering like damp rot. She turned, scanning for an exit, but the crowd was a tide, a sea of wine glasses and murmured critiques. Her eyes landed on a man standing alone by a smaller painting, his back to her. He was tall, dressed in a navy blazer that looked expensive but unpretentious, his dark hair curling slightly at the nape. Without thinking, she crossed the room, her heels clicking on the polished concrete. "Pretend you're with me," she whispered, slipping her arm through his. "Please." He turned, his hazel eyes steady, assessing but not unkind. "All right," he said, his voice low and warm, like cedar smoke. He shifted to face her, his arm adjusting to hers as if they'd rehearsed it. "I'm Theo." "You're Elena," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Thank you." Gabriel's gaze swept the room, pausing on them. Elena felt his stare like a spotlight, hot and unyielding, but Theo's presence was a shield. He leaned closer, just enough to sell the act, and said, "You're the artist, aren't you? This is your show." It wasn't a question, but it carried a quiet curiosity that made her nod. "Yes," she said, risking a glance at Gabriel, who was now moving toward them, his smile sharpening like a blade. "And I need to avoid that man in the turtleneck." Theo's eyes flicked to Gabriel, then back to her. "Got it. Follow my lead." He guided her toward the back of the gallery, his hand light on her elbow, steering her past a cluster of wine glasses and murmured critiques. The crowd parted like water around a stone. They stopped near a service door, half hidden by a velvet curtain that smelled faintly of dust. "Safe here," he said, "unless he's got a bloodhound." She laughed, a small, nervous sound that loosened the knot in her chest. "He might." "Thank you, Theo. I'm sorry for dragging you into this." "No apologies needed," he said. His face was angular, softened by a shadow of stubble, and his eyes held a quiet intensity, like a painting with layers you couldn't quite name. "Do you need to stay, or can I walk you out?" "I should stay," she said, though her chest ached to flee. "It's my show. I can't just vanish." "Then I'll stay too," he said simply, as if it were a fact, not a favor. "Point me to your favorite piece, and I'll play art enthusiast for the night." She hesitated, then led him to a canvas in the corner, a quiet piece, all muted greens and grays, a figure half dissolved in fog. "This one," she said. "It's about memory, how it holds you but never quite stays." He studied it, not with the performative nod of a gallery goer, but with genuine attention, his head tilting slightly as if listening to the painting's whisper. "It's honest," he said. "Not many are." Her cheeks warmed, a flush she hadn't expected. She realized she'd left a smudge of paint on his sleeve, a faint blue streak from her thumb where she'd gripped his arm. "Oh, God, your jacket," she said, reaching for a napkin from a nearby table. "I'll pay for the cleaning." He waved it off, a faint smile tugging at his mouth. "It's a story now. Adds character." They stood there, the hum of the gallery fading into a kind of private static. Gabriel lingered on the edges of her vision, his presence a persistent itch, but Theo's calm kept him at bay. They talked about the painting, about the way light hits a canvas at dusk, about the gallery's terrible coffee. Theo didn't pry, didn't ask why she was running from Gabriel, and she liked that. She liked, absurdly, that he didn't treat her like a puzzle to solve. When the night ended, the crowd thinning to a few stragglers, Theo handed her a card, simple, cream-colored, with just his name, Theodore Langston, and a number. "If he bothers you again," he said, "call me." She took it, the paper heavy in her hand, and felt a flicker of recognition she couldn't place, like a half-remembered melody. "Thank you, Theo," she said. "Really?" He nodded, his smile brief but warm, like a candle lit just long enough to see by. "Be well, Elena Voss." She watched him leave, his silhouette blending into the SoHo night. The gallery felt emptier without him, but her paintings stood taller, as if they'd borrowed his steadiness. She tucked the card into her pocket, its edges sharp against her fingers, and felt the night shift slightly on its axis, the way a canvas does when you add one unexpected stroke. Back in her Crown Heights studio apartment, Elena kicked off her heels and set Theo's card on her cluttered desk, next to a jar of brushes and a half-finished sketch of a cityscape fractured by rain. The space smelled of turpentine and coffee, the radiator hissing like an old friend with a cough. Her apartment was small, 450 square feet of creaking floors, a thrift store couch, and a window that caught just enough Brooklyn light to make her feel like she was stealing it. She opened her laptop, the screen's glow illuminating her tired face, shadows pooling under her eyes. She typed Theodore Langston. The results cascaded like paint spilling from a can. Langston Foundation, Langston Media, Theodore Langston, philanthropist and tech investor, 38, known for backing innovative startups and arts initiatives. A Forbes profile showed him in a flannel shirt, leaning against a desk, the Manhattan skyline a glittering backdrop. Billionaire with a painter's eye, the headline read. A candid photo caught him at a Brooklyn art fair, studying a sculpture with the same focus he'd given her painting, his brow furrowed, as if the stone might speak back. Another article mentioned his quiet funding of community art programs, his name attached to grants for studios in underserved neighborhoods. No flash, no headlines about yachts or private jets, just steady, deliberate support. Her stomach twisted, not with fear, but with the absurdity of it. She grabbed a billionaire to dodge her ex, and he played along without a hint of ego, as if being her shield was just another Tuesday. She closed the laptop, her hands trembling slightly, a tremor of adrenaline, and something else, curiosity, maybe, or the faint pull of possibility. The night felt like a brushstroke she hadn't meant to make, bold and irreversible, a mark that could ruin the canvas or redefine it. A knock startled her, sharp against the quiet. She peered through the peephole. Sonia, her best friend, holding a bag of dumplings and a bottle of cheap Merlot, her braids swinging as she shifted her weight. "Open the door, artist," Sonia called, her voice bright with impatience. "I'm here to celebrate or commiserate, your choice." Elena let her in, the warmth of Sonia's presence like a balm. Sonia, a graphic designer with a laugh that could disarm a room and a knack for seeing through bullshit, plopped onto the couch and unpacked the food, the scent of sesame and soy filling the air. "So, spill," she said, pouring wine into mismatched mugs. "How was the show? Did you sell anything? Did Gabriel try to steal your spotlight again?" Elena recounted the night, the crowd's hum, the way her paintings seemed to breathe under the lights, Gabriel's looming presence like a storm cloud, and Theo's unexpected rescue. She showed Sonia the card, its edges worn from her nervous fingers. Sonia whistled, low and long. "You snagged a billionaire's arm to avoid your ex? That's cinematic as hell, Elena." "It's not a rom-com," Elena said, though her voice lacked conviction, the memory of Theo's steady gaze lingering like a smudge of paint she couldn't wipe away. It was survival. Gabriel was there, smirking, talking to curators like he owns my work. Sonia's eyes narrowed, her mug pausing halfway to her lips. He's still pretending he invented your style? What's his deal now? He's been cozying up to curators, Elena said, her voice tight. I heard he's pitching a retrospective at a gallery in Chelsea, one that conveniently leaves me out. He's saying I leaned on him too much for our last show, that my work was just a shadow of his. Sonia snorted, setting her mug down with a clink. He's a leech. Always was. You need to shut that down, Elena. Your paintings are yours. Those colors, that rage, that quiet in the corners. He couldn't touch that if he tried. I'm trying, Elena said, picking at a dumpling. But he's got connections, gallerists, collectors, people who believe his charm. I've got paint under my nails and a maxed-out credit card. Sonia squeezed her hand, her grip firm and warm. You've got talent and guts. And maybe a billionaire who likes your fog painting. What's his deal? Why'd he play along? I don't know, Elena admitted. He didn't ask for anything. Just gave me his card and told me to call if Gabriel bothers me again. Sonia raised an eyebrow, sipping her wine. Sounds like a man who knows how to be useful without making it a transaction. That's rare. You gonna call him? Not yet, Elena said, glancing at the card. It sat on her desk like a challenge, its simplicity at odds with the weight of Theo's name. She didn't plan to call him, not tonight. But the card seemed to hum with possibility, a quiet note in the chaos of her life. The next morning, Elena awoke to a text from an unknown number. Nice show. You can't hide from me, Elena. Her skin prickled, a cold wave washing over her. Gabriel. She'd blocked his number after the breakup, deleted his emails, scrubbed him from her life like paint thinner on a stubborn stain. But he'd found a way, as he always did, slipping through the cracks like damp air. She forwarded the text to Sonia, who replied within seconds. Call the billionaire. Or a lawyer. Or both. This is stalking. Elena didn't call Theo. Instead, she went to her studio, a shared space in Bushwick where the light was good but the heat was unreliable, the radiators clanking like a bad rhythm section. The studio was a converted warehouse, its walls scarred with old paint and graffiti, the air thick with the ghosts of other artists' work. She set up a new canvas, a tangle of reds and blacks, her brushstrokes sharp with anger, each one a small act of defiance. She painted until her shoulders ached, until the canvas looked like a wound, raw and honest. By noon, her phone buzzed again, a photo of her leaving the gallery last night, Theo's arm around her, her face half-turned as if sensing the lens. The caption, new patron, or new project. Her stomach dropped, a cold weight settling in her gut. Gabriel wasn't just watching. He was documenting, turning her life into a narrative he could twist. She stared at the photo, her thumb hovering over Theo's number. She didn't want to need him, but the photo felt like a violation, a brushstroke she hadn't chosen. She called him. He answered on the first ring, his voice steady, like a hand on her shoulder. Elena, he said. Everything all right? No, she said, surprised by her own calm, the words coming out even despite the tremor in her hands. My ex is following me. He sent a photo of us from last night. I'm sorry to drag you into this. You didn't drag me, he said, his tone firm but not sharp. I chose to stay. Where are you? Bushwick. My studio. Stay there. I'm sending someone. I don't need, she started, but he cut her off, not rudely but with a quiet insistence. It's raining, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice, a warmth that cut through her panic. Let me be useful. 20 minutes later, a woman named Clara arrived, her raincoat slick and her eyes sharp, like someone who could see through walls. Security consultant, she said, shaking Elena's hand with a grip that felt like a promise. Theo sent me. Let's see the photo. Elena showed her the text, the image grainy but unmistakable. Clara's jaw tightened, a flicker of anger crossing her face. We'll trace it, she said. For now, let's get you somewhere safe. Theo's place in Dumbo, unless you object. Elena hesitated, her independence bristling. My apartment's fine. Not if he's watching, Clara said, not unkindly. Theo's building has security, cameras, doormen, the works. You can paint there, too. Bring your supplies. Elena packed her sketchbook, a change of clothes, and a small case of paints, feeling like she was stepping into someone else's life. The Dumbo loft was a study in contrasts. Raw brick walls, sleek furniture, and a wall of windows framing the Manhattan skyline like a living canvas. Theo greeted her, casual in a gray sweater, a sketchpad in hand, his fingers smudged with charcoal. "You okay?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Rattled," she admitted, setting her bag down. "But I'm here." "Good," he said, gesturing to a hallway. "There's a studio space down there. Easels, canvas light. Use it as long as you need." She studied him, searching for the catch, the hidden agenda. "Why are you doing this?" "You don't know me." "Because you asked," he said simply, his voice carrying no trace of pity. "And because I know what it's like to be cornered. Not by an ex, but by people who think they own a piece of you." She nodded, the words landing like a brushstroke she hadn't expected. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. Over the next few days, Elena settled into a strange rhythm. She painted in Theo's studio, a sunlit room with floor-to-ceiling windows and supplies better than her own, a set of Winsor & Newton oils, a teak easel, canvas stretched so taut it sang under her brush. The space felt like a gift, but gifts made her wary, their weight too close to obligation. Theo worked nearby, reviewing proposals for his foundation, his laptop screen glowing with spreadsheets and grant applications. He'd occasionally ask her opinion. "This dance program in Harlem, worth funding," or "What do you think of this VR art startup?" And she'd answer, surprised by how easily they slipped into conversation, like two people sketching on the same page. Clara checked in daily, her updates clipped but reassuring. The photo had come from a burner phone, likely Gabriel's, though proving it would take time. She'd spotted a private investigator tailing Elena's movements, parking outside her apartment in the Bushwick studio. "Navarro's building a case," Clara said. "Maybe to discredit you professionally, claim you're unstable, or leaning on Theo's influence." Elena's anger flared, hot and bright. "He's trying to erase me from my own work," she said, her brush slashing across the canvas, leaving a streak of crimson. "He's done it before, taking credit, rewriting our collaboration as his genius. Now he's following me." Theo looked up from his laptop, his expression calm, but not neutral, like a man who'd seen storms and knew how to navigate them. "He can't erase you," he said. "Your paintings speak for themselves. But he can make noise, drown you out if you let him. I have an idea, if you're open to it." She set her brush down, wiping her hands on a rag. "I'm listening." "My foundation's hosting an arts gala next month," he said, leaning back in his chair. "It's high profile, collectors, curators, press, the kind of people who shape narratives. I'd like you to be my guest, publicly. Not as a date, but as Elena Voss artist. We'll feature your work, make it the centerpiece. Gabriel's story only works if you're hiding. If you're visible, with your paintings front and center, he loses traction." She crossed her arms, her skepticism a reflex. "You're suggesting I play arm candy to a billionaire to sell my art?" "No," he said, his voice firm, eyes steady. "I'm suggesting you be Elena Voss, artist, in a room where your talent can't be ignored. In exchange, I'll fund a legal team to handle Gabriel's harassment, restraining order, cease and desist, whatever it takes. My foundation will also sponsor your next show. No strings, just support. You keep full control." She studied him, weighing the offer. It was a lifeline, but lifelines come with anchors, strings disguised as ropes. "And what do you get out of it?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Honesty," he said, leaning forward. "The gala's a circus, people posturing, deals disguised as small talk. Having someone real there grounds me. Plus, I believe in your work. I saw it last night. It's not just paint, it's a voice." Her chest tightened, a mix of gratitude and wariness. "I'll need a contract," she said. "Clear terms. No assumptions about anything." "Done," he said, a spark of respect in his eyes. "My lawyer will draft it. You pick your own to review it. Name your terms." She nodded, her mind racing. It was a deal, not a debt. But deals with men like Theo, men with money and influence, had a way of reshaping the canvas. The contract arrived the next day, delivered by Clara in a manila envelope, its pages crisp and precise. Elena's lawyer, Rachel, a sharp woman with a no-nonsense bob and a penchant for spotting loopholes, reviewed it over coffee at a Flatbush diner. "It's clean," Rachel said, tapping the pages. "Public appearances at the gala, and 2 follow-up events. No personal expectations, explicitly stated. You keep creative control of your work. They'll fund legal action against Navarro, cover security, and sponsor your next show, budget up to $50,000. There's an exit clause if you feel compromised. He's not trying to own you, Elena. That's rare." Elena sipped her coffee, the mug warm against her palms. "Too rare. What's the catch?" Rachel shrugged. "Maybe there isn't one. Or maybe it's just not on paper. Men like Langston don't need contracts to pull strings. They've got money and gravity. But this? It's a good deal. You decide how much you trust him." Elena signed, her signature a deliberate mark, like a brushstroke claiming ownership. She added her own clause. Any public narrative involving her required her approval. Theo's lawyer agreed without hesitation, and Theo himself called to confirm. "Your terms are fair," he said. "I want this to work for you." "It better," she said, half joking, but her voice held an edge. "I'm not here to be anyone's prop." "You won't be," he said, and she believed him, if only because his voice carried no trace of charm, just conviction. The weeks before the gala were a blur of preparation. Elena selected 3 paintings from her SoHo show to feature, including the fog piece Theo had admired. She worked late in Theo's studio, refining details, the city skyline a silent audience through the windows. Theo was there some nights, sketching or reading, his presence quiet but steady. They talked about art, her love for Rothko's emotional weight, his fascination with Basquiat's raw edges, but never about Gabriel, never about the deal. It was a boundary they both respected, a line drawn in charcoal, easily smudged but clear for now. Clara's updates grew grimmer. The private investigator was linked to a firm Gabriel had hired before, one known for digging dirt on artists to sway gallerists. "He's trying to paint you as unstable," Clara said, "saying you relied on him for your last show, that your new work's propped up by Theo's money." Elena's brush froze mid-stroke, her anger a hot pulse in her throat. "He's rewriting my life again." "Then rewrite it back," Clara said, her voice calm but firm. "The gala's your chance. Show them who you are." The Chelsea warehouse was transformed into a glittering maze of art and ambition, its high ceilings strung with Edison bulbs, its walls lined with sculptures and canvases. Elena wore a deep green dress, its silhouette sharp but flowing, chosen to feel like armor rather than adornment. Her hair was loose, a cascade of dark waves, a deliberate choice to look like herself, not a polished version. Theo, in a tailored charcoal suit, stayed close but never crowded her, his presence a quiet anchor in the room's chaos. Her paintings hung prominently, 3 bold pieces, the fog painting flanked by 2 others, one a fiery swirl of reds and oranges, the other a stark black and white study of hands reaching through shadow. The crowd gravitated toward them, whispers of visceral and urgent floating like dust motes in the light. Elena felt exposed but powerful, her work speaking louder than she ever could. Gabriel was there, his turtleneck swapped for a sleek suit, his face tight, with suppressed fury as curators fawned over Elena's paintings. He lingered on the edges, his eyes tracking her like a predator waiting for a misstep. She ignored him, focusing on the questions from collectors, the nods from critics. A woman from Art Forum approached, her notebook open. "Ms. Voss, your use of color is visceral. How do you balance instinct and intention?" Elena smiled, channeling Theo's calm, his steady presence a few feet away. "Instinct starts the stroke. Intention finishes it," she said. "The trick is knowing when to let go, when the painting's done speaking." The critic nodded, scribbling furiously. Theo's hand brushed her back, a silent well done, a touch so brief it could have been accidental but wasn't. The night felt like a victory, a canvas reclaimed, but victory has a shadow. Gabriel cornered her near the coat check, his voice low, smooth as a new blade. "You think this erases me, Elena? I made you." She stepped closer, her voice steady, her spine aligned. "You took from me. You took ideas, credit time. I'm done letting you rewrite my story." Theo appeared, his presence a quiet storm, his eyes locked on Gabriel. "Navarro," he said, the name carrying weight, like a stone dropped into still water. "Walk away." Gabriel's smile was a blade, sharp and cold. "She'll crash without you, Langston, and you'll move on to the next project." "She's not crashing," Theo said, his voice low but unyielding. "And I'm not the one who needs to move." Gabriel's mouth twitched, a flicker of rage, but he turned and left, his footsteps sharp against the concrete. Elena exhaled, her hands trembling slightly. In the car, a sleek black sedan that glided through the city like a whisper, she leaned back, the leather cool against her skin. "He's not wrong," she said, her voice quiet. "This world, your world, choose people like me. Then we change the world," Theo said, his eyes on the city lights, his voice steady but not dismissive. "Starting with your next show. Your terms, your vision." She looked at him, his profile sharp against the tinted window. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he said, turning to meet her gaze. "But it's possible." The gala made Elena a name. Her painting sold out, fetching prices that made her head spin. $15,000 for the fog piece, $20,000 for the red swirl. The New York Times ran a feature. Elena Voss, the artist who painted her way out of the shadows. The article called her work a raw, unflinching dialogue with loss and resilience, and she read it twice, half expecting it to vanish like a dream. But visibility brought vultures. Paparazzi trailed her, their cameras clicking like insects outside her studio. An anonymous blog posted a leaked email from Theo's foundation, suggesting Elena's prominence was a strategic investment to soften his image amid a controversial tech acquisition by Langston Media, a company he'd founded but no longer ran day-to-day. Elena confronted Theo in his loft, her laptop open to the blog post, her hands cold with anger. "Did you use me to look good?" she asked, her voice oddly quiet, like the calm before a storm. He flinched, a rare crack in his composure, but his voice was steady. "No." The email was a draft from a junior staffer, rejected before it reached me. "I didn't know it existed, but I should have anticipated it. My team's too used to spinning narratives." "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't erase the feeling of being a prop," she said, her words sharp, cutting through the air. "I trusted you, Theo. I signed your contract, stood in your spotlight, and now my life's a bullet point in someone's PR plan." He stepped closer, not crowding, but close enough to show he wasn't dodging. "I know," he said. "I fired the staffer, and I'm revising our grant process to prioritize transparency. No artist's story gets used without consent, not ever again. But that's my mess to clean. What do you need from me?" She hesitated, her anger fraying at the edges, softening into something more complicated. Disappointment, maybe, or the ache of wanting to believe him. "Space," she said finally. "I need to go home, paint in my own studio, hear my own thoughts." He nodded, his face tight with something like grief, a flicker of vulnerability that caught her off guard. "Clara will make sure you're safe. Call if you need me. Or don't. Your choice." She left, her apartment's familiar chaos a relief after the polished expanse of Theo's loft. The smell of turpentine, the creak of the floorboards, the chipped mug on her counter. They were hers, untainted by anyone else's narrative. Sonia came over with pizza and a bottle of bourbon, her outrage a match for Elena's. "He should have known his team would pull that," Sonia said, slicing the pizza with a ferocity that suggested she'd rather be slicing the blog post. "But he's trying to fix it. That's something." "It's not enough," Elena said, pouring bourbon into a glass. "I don't want to be a pawn in his world, even if he's sorry." Sonia nodded, her eyes soft but sharp. "Then don't be. Paint. Fight. Be you. But don't write him off yet. He's not Gabriel." Elena sipped the bourbon, its burn grounding her. She didn't want to need Theo, but his apology, quiet, concrete, not a performance, stayed with her, like a brushstroke she couldn't erase. Elena painted for days, her work growing bolder, more abstract, her canvases filled with jagged lines and colors that screamed. She met with Rachel, who filed a cease and desist against Gabriel's harassment, citing the texts and the private investigator. Clara traced the blog to a PR firm linked to Gabriel, one he'd used to smear rivals before. Theo's legal team sent a warning to the firm, and the blog post vanished, though its shadow lingered in the comment sections, where trolls called Elena a gold digger and a hustler. Theo didn't call, honoring her request for space. Instead, he sent an email, its subject line simple: changes. I've revised our grant process. No artist story will be used without consent. Receipts attached if you want them. New policies, signed contracts, a public statement. If you don't want to see them, I'll respect that too. I'm sorry. Attached were PDFs, dense with legalese, but clear in intent. No more narrative manipulation. No more strategic investments in people's lives. She read it twice, her finger hovering over the reply button. She typed, I saw the email. Thank you. Meet me at Prospect Park tomorrow. 10 a.m. Bring your sketch pad. They met by a grove of maples, the leaves turning gold in the October light. Elena carried a sketchbook, Theo a pad, and a tin of charcoals. They sat on a bench, sketching in companionable silence. He drew the trees, their branches like veins. She drew the light, its angles sharp and fleeting. No cameras, no contracts, just two people learning to see each other without the weight of a deal. You kept your word, she said finally, her pencil pausing. The policies, the statement. It matters. I'm in it, he said, his eyes on his sketch, his voice quiet but firm. I don't want to be the kind of man who builds machines that chew people up. She nodded, her throat tight. I'm still figuring out what I want. But I'd like to keep sketching with you. No galas, no headlines. Just this. Deal, he said, and they smiled, the air between them soft and breathable. Gabriel's harassment didn't stop, but it changed shape. He stopped texting, but Clara reported he was pitching a new narrative to gallerists. Elena's success was a fluke, propped up by Theo's money and influence. He was planning a show of his own, a reclamation of their shared work, claiming her best ideas as his. Elena's anger was a live wire, sparking every time she thought of him rewriting her again. She met with a journalist, Lila Chun, who'd written the Times piece and wanted a follow-up. Over coffee in a quiet shop near Union Square, Lila leaned forward, her recorder off. Off the record, for now, she said. Gabriel's making noise. People are listening. What's your story? My story's in my paintings, Elena said, her voice steady. He can't take that, but he's trying to take my name, my credibility. I won't let him. Lila nodded, her eyes sharp with understanding. If you go on the record, I can tell your side. But it'll get messy, his allies, the art world's politics. Are you ready? Elena thought of Theo's policies, of Clara's vigilance, of Sonia's fierce loyalty. Yes, she said, but I want it to be about the work, not the drama. The article ran a week later. Elena Voss, the artist who owns her frame. It quoted her sparingly, letting her paintings speak. Images of the fog piece, the red swirl, a new work she'd finished in Theo's studio, a blue and gold abstraction of a city waking up. It mentioned Gabriel's claims, but framed them as desperate, a man clinging to a narrative no one needed. The comments were mixed. Some praised her, others called her a billionaire's muse, but the art world listened. Galleries called, collectors emailed, and her next show was booked at a space in Williamsburg, fully funded by Theo's foundation, but curated by Elena alone. Gabriel's show flopped, his work criticized as derivative, his narrative unraveling under scrutiny. The restraining order Rachel filed held, backed by evidence of his texts and the PI's reports. He receded, a shadow shrinking in the light of Elena's rising star. Elena and Theo grew closer, careful but unafraid. He learned her love for late-night bodega runs, her habit of humming Nina Simone while mixing paints. She learned his quirks, his preference for black coffee so hot it burned, his quiet habit of sketching strangers in parks, his tenderness with his rescue dog, a scruffy mutt named Jasper, who followed him like a shadow. They fought, about his tendency to solve problems with money, her fear of being consumed by his world, but they fought with honesty, apologies that felt like promises. One evening, as they walked the High Line, the city's lights glittering like a canvas, Theo stopped. I don't want to borrow you anymore, he said, his voice soft but clear. I want to build something real, if you'll let me. She looked at him, the skyline framing his face, his eyes steady, but vulnerable. Slowly, she said, "No galleries, no headlines. Just us, coffee, sketches, Jasper drooling on my shoes." "Deal," he said, and they kissed, the city humming its approval, a quiet note in the night symphony. Elena's career soared, her paintings in galleries from Brooklyn to Berlin, her voice her own. Theo stepped back from his foundation's daily operations, mentoring artists directly, his wealth a tool, not a title. They built a life, messy, honest theirs. They fought about small things, his habit of leaving charcoal smudges on her counter, her tendency to lose track of time in the studio. But they fought knowing how to apologize, how to listen. Gabriel faded, a footnote in a story no one cared to read. He took a teaching job in a small town upstate, his influence waning as Elena's grew. The restraining order stayed filed, a quiet reminder of boundaries enforced. Lila wrote a third piece, The Art of Staying True, profiling Elena and Theo as partners in art and life. Their story not a fairy tale, but a deliberate choice. On the anniversary of the gallery night, they returned to SoHo, the streets slick with rain, the air sharp with possibility. They stood outside the gallery, now showing a new artist's work, and Theo took her hand. "Thank you for not letting me save you," he said. "You didn't," she said, smiling. "You gave me a shield. I saved myself." He nodded, his eyes bright. "And you taught me how to be a person, not a patron." They kissed, brief and warm, the city a canvas around them. Elena thought, "I didn't fall in love with a billionaire. I fell in love with a man who learned to see my light." Elena's paintings hung in museums, her name synonymous with resilience and truth. She counseled young artists, teaching them to claim their voices, to paint through fear. Theo funded studios in underserved neighborhoods, his wealth a brushstroke in service of others. They lived in Brooklyn, in a brownstone with a skylight studio. Jasper sprawled across the floor. Their life was not perfect. Money didn't erase doubts, and love didn't erase fights. But it was theirs, built stroke by stroke, a canvas of their own making.